We have got a very special guest this evening. I'm actually joining with my guest from the other side of the pond, as it were. I'm in the United Kingdom, and the guest we have today is Nina Takesh. Have I got your pronunciation of the surname correct?
Wonderful.
Great. We're up to a good start. So Nina is a very successful luxury interior designer from Beverly Hills who is obsessed about interiors. Nina is the founder and CEO and creative force behind not just one, not two, three successful businesses. So I'm going to use a bit of my French petit peu accent here because us Brits, we don't do very well with other languages apart from English. Of your luxury baby brand store that you've got where...
Très bien.
Oh, you say it so much better. And from my research, that luxury brand store that you had people like Gwen Stefani go into it, Jennifer Lopez, Madonna regularly shop there. Your average run-of-the-mill kind of person. Yeah, absolutely. And you have a home flipping business for which you remodeled and designed countless houses, a residential commercial interior designer, Nina Takesh, where you create unique interiors for clients all across the world. Also got an MBA, and he worked for French fashion house Guy Laroche. And you're also an Amazon influencer. And you've got a popular YouTube channel called Nina Takesh Red Elevator. You also worked across the world within the FMCG sector before you went into entrepreneurialism, spending in Argentina.
Yes, I did work and live in Argentina. My first husband was Argentine, and so that is what took me to Argentina.
So tell us more. You're tremendously successful, but how did this all begin? I'd love to hear about more your voyage in Argentina and coming back to the United States, who the real Nina Takesh is.
It's really been an evolution of sorts. I grew up not really realizing how tremendously lucky I was because we were able to leave Iran in 1978, a year prior to the revolution. So unlike most people who had to flee with a suitcase, we had the luxury of being able to pack, and clearly remember moving to Los Angeles with my parents and looking for homes. And that was a while back. And went to a French school, le lycée français, and learned French was my second language after Farsi. And then I learned Spanish as well. So languages have come easily to me. And my mother speaks 7 languages. And so it was important to her to make sure that we were very rounded individuals and very independent. So I believe that where it starts really is home. And I do credit my mother 100% for giving me the education and everything that I have. Really, I owe to them for really pushing and allowing me to get the best education so that I can possibly have a successful life. And after lycée français, I went to a school by the name of Harvard Westlake, which at the time was Westlake School for Girls, and it was very empowering. And my mother always told me, never marry any guy for any other reason than love, and always be independent, always have your own job. And she literally said that, I think, on the daily. So it was never an option just to be a mother, which is a significant role and a significant job. And I always knew that was not going to be enough for me. And so I always had a lot of ambition.
Yeah, really fascinating. And the way you just describe all of that. But I think the question that a lot of the audience will want to know is that in your household, which one's king? French cuisine, Persian cuisine? Is it gourmet sabzi or is it duck l'orange?
No, we love French food, but I have to tell you, my nanny, who has been with me for 12 years, the kids are gone. They could be graduated from high school and they're in college, but the nanny's still here making gourmet sabzi, and she is from Latin America. So I taught her how to make most delicious côtelette, gourmet sabzi, taime, all of it. And my kids are obsessed as well. And we eat a lot of Persian food. My current husband, who's an American from DC, when he goes to the Persian market, he's tall and blonde and looks nothing like a Persian. They're like, you must have a Persian wife. He's, yes, I do. Yes, I do. But he knows all the terminology and he can't get enough of it.
Iranian cuisine is so nice. I lived in Iran for 4 years during the Iran-Iraq war. came to the UK, couldn't speak a word of English. I've said this story a few times. I left Iran, but Iran never left me. I think in order to keep a culture going, food and language is critical. Is that important in your household that you keep that side of you going with your kids?
It's very important. And my kids crave the Persian food. In fact, that's the only way I can bribe my son to come home. He goes to a school locally to the university here at USC. So he's not far. And the only way I can come home, I can get him to come home is I say to him, I have chilo kebab waiting. And you get to, I'm also have additional chilo kebab you can take with you to school. And he rushes over. Otherwise, I don't think he'd come home. And it is a very ritualistic family dynamic where food is really the center of the home. And culturally, it's a very important time of day and important aspect. And in fact, when people invite friends over, there has to be a plethora of food in excess almost in order to show people that you are very welcoming and you're happy that they're there and you actually like their presence. And so you do that with food. And mothers really show their love to their children, Iranian mothers, by feeding them and giving them the best possible food that they can eat. And they spend hours doing so. And so it's very ritualistic and it is very important and delicious, may I add.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm salivating, even though it's late here. So, where did this all begin? Because when I was doing my research, I confused 13 years with 4 years. I think I was looking at your LinkedIn profile, being a headhunter as part of my job, researching people. But you work for corporate giants within the kind of FMCG space, Kimberly Clark, Unilever, all that kind of jazz. Did that help a lot when you made the transition from corporate into becoming an entrepreneur?
Tremendously. I would say some of the skills that I learned working in consumer packaged goods at Kimberly Clark or from AC Nielsen, in fact, where we did a lot of market research and studies for corporations like Unilever, et cetera. Most of my knowledge, I went to business school after my undergraduate studies and we were forced to live in Paris. It was a huge sacrifice we had to make, and we also worked in Paris. So I had a lot of training in that sense and I had real world experience, but working at big corporate companies really was life changing, in my opinion, in that we learned so much about how to run a business and what were the skills that we needed as basic as learning how to really master Excel and do projections and calculations and sales per region, per category, per product. All of those things, which seemed very mundane at the time, really became an integral part of being a successful business person. And I was able to use a lot of that knowledge and decided to leave a corporate job and start something of my own because of the fact that I felt very stifled and I didn't feel like I had any creativity. It was just basically rinse and repeat. How can you increase sales of these diapers within a region and within a market? And after I mastered that, I said, okay, I'm over that. Let's do something else. But the experience was very important, not only in terms of the work itself, but the relationships and the way that you interact with people. A lot of it is how do you write a great email? How are you convincing? How do you go to these meetings and speak? A big part of my job when I was at AC Nielsen prior to being scooped up by Kimberly Clark, who employed AC Nielsen for their data, was giving a presentation in front of an audience. We would do our research, our market research at AC Nielsen. Then we would go to our clients at the time, which was Kimberly Clark, and we present the market and industry information to them. And with that knowledge, they would make decisions as to what to do with either packaging or sales or pricing or whatever, and what was happening with their competitors. And probably the best experience was having these live presentations on a continuous basis where you're interacting with all kinds of executives, low level, mid level, high level, and learning how to interact with people, which I find today a lot of youngsters, people who work for my company, don't have as much experience in that because they haven't had all of that. A lot of you young entrepreneurs who are doing very well, who are very successful, have difficulty and are a little bit awkward because of the fact that they haven't had that experience interacting with people.
Yeah, life must suck being forced to live in Paris. I could almost hear the violins here from London playing for you. My heart bleeds.
It's very, very
Oh,
lonely.
it's awful. Really bad. Seriously, in terms of that transition, you are obviously doing very well. What was the mindset shift in trading in a guaranteed salary to actually go in it alone? Because a lot of people, they dream of it, but the fear of risk outweigh desire to change. Talk us through that kind of gymnastics.
That's an excellent point. And what I always want to share with people who ask me, who are interested, is that if you're working a job from 9 to 5, there's very little that you can achieve in a lifetime working for somebody else because you're as great as your work may be and as much money as you're going to make. It's going to be capped out. And the reason it's capped out is because you're one individual using your time in order to get a certain output. If you want multiple outputs, you can do that only if you work for yourself and you're able to, unless you have side hustles. But in reality, taking that risk, that leap, which is very scary to people, to me came very naturally. I was always a risk taker. When my mom wasn't looking, I was climbing the walls at a friend's house and walking along the periphery of their property just for fun. It was an 8-foot wall. So what if we fell? Climbing the trees. I was a risk taker to a certain degree. I was never afraid. And I knew deep down, I had a conviction that I knew something greater was waiting for me other than sitting in a cubicle. And I had to follow that. I didn't come alive until I was able to really make those decisions for myself and trust my gut. And if you listen to your gut, it's typically right. Every time I listen to my gut, even though I've argued with myself against it, it has been a home run. So upon returning from Argentina, I got pregnant and was going to take some time off to have the baby and then maybe go back and work in consumer packaged goods, whether I was thinking about maybe going to Nestle or going back to one of the companies that I had previously worked at. And I was shopping for baby items and while pregnant and realized that I had to go to 4 or 5 different stores in order to procure these items. So I had to go to Babies R Us to get a stroller. I had to go to this specialty retail shop to get cute outfits. I had to go somewhere else to buy furniture. And I thought to myself, I cannot believe this day and age, I have to travel to all these different locations to get what basic motherhood needs for year one. How difficult could it be? And that's really where the one-stop shop concept pretty much appeared. And it became a concept in the United States that became quite viable. And it was something that was seen for many years. And so we really coined that one-stop shop phrase. And hence Petit Trésor was born, which allowed mothers to buy everything that they need for the first year of their birth, for the first year of their child's life, for that they might necessitate, from your stroller to your breast pump to even your maternity brassiere or bra to your incredible Italian crib with beautiful linens down to clothing and so forth. So everything you could possibly need was curated and brought into this small boutique where you could just walk in, feel very comfortable, get everything you're going to need in one place, be able to register in one place, be able to get everything that's necessary for year one and move on with your life. And so we were lucky in that one of our first big clients was Britney Spears, who at the time was pregnant with her first son. And we just blew up because of her fame at the time and the fact that she was with, I believe, Kevin Federline and everybody was following her and she was big news. And that really put us on the map. And then the trend just kept going. And I didn't approach Petit Trésor as me being a boutique owner. I approached it as a business. And so in order to make it grow, not just you either franchise or you have multiple locations, which we did at one point, but what was interesting to me was licensing. And so we were lucky enough to be in Target. We had an end cap there where we had our own Petit Trésor Layette that we sold. We were in Babies R Us, Bye Bye Baby, a lot of these big giant companies in the United States that carry baby products. And so our name the goodwill value of the name was quite high. And the brand was very well and highly recognized. And that was my first dip into being an entrepreneur and cashing in from every direction. So it's not just a matter of doing retail sales. We also, our motto was we never say no. If someone were to come in, which they did, for instance, a Saudi prince came in and said, I want everything and I want you to pack it up and just deliver it to my jet in 2 weeks. We said, of course. And we're like, then we'd scramble on and making sure that we did everything down to and we had great relationships with vendors. And we were able to do anything and everything that we wanted to do because that was our mindset. My mindset always was, if, yes, customer's always right, and we're going to get it done. And we were lucky enough even to fly to Bahrain and do the king's daughter's nurseries for her twins. And the experiences that I had working in this particular little boutique were phenomenal. But they were also very grueling. It is very hard to be in retail for as long as it was. And after approximately, I want to say 16, 17 years, I decided to close the business and start my true passion, which was always there, which was interior design. Now, I want to preface that by saying I was doing interior design work for a host of clients in Los Angeles. So I was already in the space doing these incredible nurseries, Jennifer Lopez, just changing the aesthetic of infant rooms from the ubiquitous ABC primary colored rooms into these very luxurious, very beautiful rooms that prior to us designing them didn't really exist. People were treating baby rooms as baby rooms. They'd put a lion on the wall, they'd put an ABC rug, they would get some primary colors, and that was it. And we just stepped it up and decided to bring in antique chandeliers and iron cribs and linens from Italy, et cetera, et cetera. So that was the most fun that I had, was doing those nurseries. And so when I decided to close the business for a host of reasons, the next chapter was, okay, here I am in my late 40s at this point, and I have to start from zero, literally from zero, because I no longer want to be in retail and I no longer want to be in baby because you get tired. I was tired of baby. And so that's when I decided that I'm just going to do what I love. And whether it makes money or not was irrelevant to me because I'd always saved. I'd always been fiscally responsible. And so the goal is never the money. It should never be the money. You shouldn't be thinking, okay, I'm going to do this because I'm going to make X amount. That's your goal. You're never going to succeed. The goal should be that you have passion for what you're doing and you want to share it. And I wanted to share my passion for interior design with the world. And that's how it all began, Takesh Designs. I would just share on Instagram imagery, not even mine, of designers that I appreciated, of work that I thought was fantastic. And I began to get a type of cult following, which led to me getting clients probably 3 days after I closed the store and shut it down completely. I already had clients, very good clients, international clients that had great budgets to do really beautiful works. Again, it's really about the belief and it's about the passion and it's about putting your best step forward and never being afraid. Because if you're going to be afraid, you're never going to succeed. And what I always told my kids is to never, ever, and I kept saying it over and over, ever give up. If you give up, you're done. There's no reason to give up. The difference between me being successful and Susie not being successful is that I decided to keep going, which Susie could have easily done. There's nothing special about me other than the fact that I just won't give up.
You're very smart. I mean, don't look in your late 40s or in your early 40s, definitely much younger than that. And so much to unpack there in what you said. When you started that boutique baby shop, did you always know from the beginning it was going to be successful? You had that kind of single-mindedness success, because they say in any business plan, you should have the best case scenario, realistic scenario, and worst case scenario. And some entrepreneurs are so maverick that they just see straight ahead of them and they've got that tunnel vision and that this will be successful and nothing else comes across their path. How was it for you?
I can't say that I didn't think of the worst case scenario because I always consider the worst case scenario because it takes away my fear. So I said to myself, all right, I'm going to give up my career with my MBA, yeah, going to a consumer packaged goods company. And instead, I'm going to open a retail store, which is typically people with lesser education do that. So I thought to myself, what's the worst case scenario? The worst case scenario is I got a $100,000 loan to open the boutique because as a woman, you have government subsidized loans that are ready and backed by the US government. So it's really easy to get those loans as long as you write a business plan. So I thought to myself, worst case scenario, I lose $100,000, which I would pay back. It would cost me X amount of time to pay it off. It's going to be very painful, but that's the worst case scenario is I lose $100,000. Is that going, and by the way, I wasn't sitting on a pile of cash. I did not, I was lucky in that I grew up in a very affluent family. But upon graduating from MBA school, I was on my own. My parents didn't give me any more money, which I really appreciated. At the time, I wasn't so excited about it, but I really was appreciated the fact that I literally had what was in my bank account, which was nothing because I was just a student having a good time. And so it's not that I was sitting on a pile of cash and worst case scenario, what's 100,000? No, I didn't even have $100,000, but worst case scenario meant that I had $100,000 that I would need to pay back. And is that going to ruin me? No. Is it going to be painful to pay back? Of course. But that's the worst case. And I would go back to work and I would take my time in paying this loan back according to the terms of the loan. And that would have been the end of the story. But in my gut, I just knew that it was going to do well because it was better than anything that I had seen out there. I did my market research. It was based on an experience that I had. It wasn't just a random idea that I had. It'd be fun to have a baby store because I have a baby. No, it was a need for it. There was a lack of service. There was a lack of a single store that had everything that a mother would want. And with things that were very European and chic and elevated, everything that I had seen was really unattractive, to be honest. You're in London. Everything is bon point. You've got these Harrods. Even back in the day, they have gorgeous products for children. In America, at the time, it was very different. All the products were very unattractive. It was all overalls and everyone's turning their kids into little terrible looking things. And so I knew that I had friends who would need to frequent the store. I knew there was a need for this. And because of that, it was based on some true knowledge. And also, I did have an instinct about it.
Yeah, fascinating. And you talk about the fact that despite the successes and all of this, from Saudi Prince to Britney to all of these celebrities coming into your shop, which must have been like a bit of a thrill as well, seeing these people actually buying your products, that retail's brutal and it takes a lot out of you. And being a working mother, when I've spoken to very successful women, there is sometimes this feeling of guilt that they almost have feeling like there's a trade-off, or they feel like they're spending time on this, but they might be negating that. And talk me through how you were able to go through that process and work out that process.
I could sit here and say I felt really guilty when I wasn't home. But to be honest, I didn't feel much guilt because I was fulfilled as a human being. And I knew that in order for me to be a good mother, I needed to be happy as an individual so that the time I did spend with my son were happy ones. And I could see myself getting frustrated being at home, trying to feed my child, bathing my child, going on a stroll constantly day after day. And I knew that wasn't for me. I'll be honest with you. Most people won't admit to it, but I'm very honest. The thought, it was mind numbing to just sit at home for 12 hours and do baby talk. I couldn't do it. And I honestly couldn't wait for the nanny because at the time she would commute and come and go. I couldn't wait for her to arrive, to be honest, so that I could leave, so that I could have a piece of me back. I felt that I lost myself upon having a child. And it was almost a necessity for me to go to work and for me to come back rejoiced and fulfilled in order to be able to be a better mother. And I truly believe that because of that, I was a better mother. And Did I sometimes feel sad? And do I have regret now a little bit more than before? Now I wish I had spent more quality time other rather than being in the office. But what I have given my son is an understanding of what it is to be successful, how hard one must work to be successful by being a representative of what I dictate. So him growing up, seeing his mother work and be responsible and take life seriously, et cetera, has instilled that same work ethic in him. And I've seen that in him, especially because I got divorced when he was a year old. And I was essentially alone. I was a single mother with a 1 year old baby and had to figure it out. And even more so, him seeing me reflected in who he was as a person, because children see themselves in their parents, was very important. And in my experience, it was painful, but I was very lucky in that I had a nanny who truly loved my son. They had a wonderful relationship. They would go on these play dates with the neighbors, and I knew he was well taken care of. And so that was a big relief. I didn't put him in daycare. It's not that I didn't know where he was. I knew exactly where he was. I knew exactly what he was doing. And I knew that he was having fun. And then because he would express it to me and he would tell me how much fun he was having. And I could tell how much he was growing from those experiences that I might not have been able to give to him because I just would not have been that patient, or I would have been multitasking instead of being focused on him. But the nanny had to be 100% focused all day long. And he was the kind of child that needed that one-on-one interaction. All in all, I'm happy with what happened and how it turned out. And if you look at my son today, he's a very serious human being who basically took care of everything he needed. He also went to Harvard Westlake, followed in my footsteps, and now is studying aerospace engineering. My other son is at Berkeley. So I feel like I set a good example. And that to me was very important as well.
Yeah, because when hard work and talent combine, it leads to epic. And sometimes people that have a lot of talent, if they don't put in the hard work, they get found out. And at times as well, when people have talent, they don't want to pit themselves or challenge themselves, because if they get exposed at their best that they weren't quite good enough, they can't take it. And I'll give you an example. There's a tennis player called Nick Kyrgios, and he's very talented, but he always uses the excuse, oh, if I trained harder and if I really took this sport seriously, I would be probably winning a Grand Slam by now and stuff. And a lot of it comes from a place of deep insecurity that somehow if he did give it his best and if he did really try hard and everything else and he lost, he might not be able to take it. So you could always hide behind something. Your work ethic and your goal orientated mindset in terms of your personality that is quite clearly evident. Were you always like that from an early age? And do you take it from your mom or your dad in terms of that kind of personality traits do you possess?
It's funny. My father was more of a joie de vivre kind of guy. He loved vacationing, living in the moment, etc. And my mother was the opposite. She, although at the time when growing up, she didn't work, you see her today, and she decided after she got a divorce from my father that she was going to get her education because she was married. She had an arranged marriage in Iran. One good family with another was merged. And at 17, she was married off, although she didn't want to marry at that age. And she was made to be the perfect mother. When she did divorce my father, she went back to school and got an education and continuously pushed herself. I won't say her age, but she's older than me, and she's a workaholic. So I definitely get it from my mother. And I believe it's funny. Whenever I was in school, I seemed to be a little disinterested, to be honest. I wasn't your perfect student, A plus. Oh, Nina's perfect. She's on the debate team and so forth. I was a very good student. I did my work, but I didn't study. I found studying to be boring. And so what my mother tells me is that unlike my sister who studied 24/7, was magna cum laude and the perfect student, I did the bare minimum and got pretty good grades considering I did nothing. I don't know how you would translate that. Was I born with this drive to succeed? No. I was born with a drive to live. And that was always evident in my excursions where I'd climb walls and do things that were fun. I was always interested in learning, interested in finding, but only things that interested me. If I wasn't interested in geography, I would just tune out. And a lot of times the teacher's main complaint about me was Nina est dans la lune. I was dans la lune. And my mother to this day says, Nina, you were in the clouds. Nobody knew where I was. And that's because I was just imagining. I have this big, great imagination. And so I think that I evolved as not a type A, I was more of a creative. And then when the creative and the type A Virgo in me collided, which was basically the day that my parents said, you're on your own, that was when this type A collision happened. Because I remember my dad saying, listen, I'm just not going to be sending you any money because you got your first job out of business school. So you're good. And I said, what do you mean you're not sending me any money? I was used to him sending me money monthly. And he said, no, there's no need. You have a job, right? Yes. So I'm not going to pay your rent or I'm not going to give you money. I said, surely you'll pay my car payment. He said, no, no car payment. And I said, car insurance? No car insurance. The gas for my car? No, nothing. I found out many years later because my father has a really soft spot for his daughters and could never say no and is very generous to a fault, that my sister said to him, if you give Nina $1, my sister's very cautious lawyer, crosses the crosswalk only when it's green, hasn't yet to jaywalk in her life, 2 years older than me. She said to my father, and he is the light of her. They are like, they love each other. I love my father too, but they have this connection that I can't duplicate. And she said to him, if you give money to Nina, I will not speak to you. And so the reason I was cut off basically from the day I graduated was it was really my sister who was so fiscally responsible and loved to do things herself and wanted, et cetera, wanted me to be the same way that she was and didn't want me to accept money from my dad. And so when I was cut off, I realized that I had just gotten myself a BMW, not smart, leased, or at that point financed. I had a job and I had a very nice apartment. And when I calculated my expenses, I only had at the end $4 a day for food. After I paid my car and my car insurance, the bare minimum, the electricity and my apartment, I had $4. Forget about movies and shopping or anything like that. I had $4. And I thought to myself, now what am I going to do? I have $4. Like, I'm not going to be able to eat on $4. I mean, I'm going to try. I'm going to buy rice and pasta from Costco, but how am I going to live? And that's when I was like, I know what I'm going to do. I'm going to get a second job. I'm going to do consulting on the side, which I got a second job so that I could have extra income. And then once I had that extra income, I was doing 2 jobs at once. I was working during the day at the Japanese trading house. And then I was going and doing my management consulting job where I would write reports for the city of Pacoima, don't ask. And I would turn in my assignments. I would get a check. And then I was able to live that way. And that's where it all began. When I saw that hard work equaled extra cash, I was like, cash is freedom. Freedom is fun. I like to have fun. I like to be free. I like experiences. I always wanted experience. I couldn't sit still. And that was really the precursor to my business success was suffering. I don't know if I would have been the same if my parents continued to just give me money. I don't know if I would have been as motivated. I try and be very honest in your podcast so that people can have a takeaway and say, maybe I shouldn't give my son or daughter cash just because I love them. Maybe it's better to let them figure things out. Maybe it's good to see them suffer. And I truly believe that had I not suffered a bit and didn't have that $4, I'm still scarred by the $4 a day budget. I'll tell you, I had to go. I couldn't eat. Most people were going to Subway at lunchtime and
What did you buy for the $4? We're on a cliffhanger here.
canned corn and rice and soy sauce. And it was delicious. And I would cook it during lunch at my sister's house because her house was very close to my office. And I would go to her house and she's, oh yeah, you better go to my house and cook your lunch because you're not going to be able to afford to go to Subway. She was like secretly happy about it. And I would literally go and I put the corn and I eat it and then I go to work. And it cost me, I could get by with the $4 budget. And then I became a saver. That's when I said, okay, I need to have savings. I need to start paying off some of my debt. And I just started paying off my credit cards, paying them off. And I really enjoyed this being debt free because then I didn't have minimum payments. And then it was a game for me. I don't want to pay APR interest of any kind. And why would I do that? If I'm working this hard, if I'm paying $4 for lunch, if I'm lucky, and dinner, I don't want to waste even $3 on interest payments. So it just became something that made sense to me. And it was logical. And I've always been logical. And the logistics of it was where I said, okay, I'm going to maximize my potential by being able to get as much as I can in the amount of time that I'm alive. I have 12 hours of being awake. What can I do within these 12 hours that are going to maximize my potential to be able to pay off my debt, live, and go out and have fun and be able to live and keep going?
Yeah, you're super sharp. You can tell you're so switched on, and you make so many stellar points. When it comes to happiness, the secret to happiness is freedom. But in order to have freedom, you must have courage. To have that freedom, can't just claim it, you have to practice it. You've been scarred with this $4, which in the end was a blessing. That bit of trauma made you who you are, and you were tremendously successful with this retail outlet. Was it scary to stop it after having so much success and start all over again?
Oh, very. I'd be lying if I said, oh, I don't know, it's so easy. No, I was worried. I was worried that maybe it was a one-off. Maybe I got lucky. Maybe it was because Britney Spears walked in. So it was even more important to me than when I had opened the store that this second venture would be equally successful, not knowing that actually it would be even more successful. That didn't cross my mind, but to reinvent oneself later in life into a completely different industry that you had very little experience in and become successful at it was a big feat. And I was even more motivated because I wanted to prove, which is not good. I know deep down that I don't need to prove anything to anyone. Nobody's taking notes and nobody has a chart on Nina saying Nina did well in this lifetime other than God. But it was important to me to prove that the success of that business was due to my perseverance, hard work, dedication, and that I had a brain for business and I was going to do it again. And that was really important to me, a little bit too important now, but it was important for me to be able to show that and that it wasn't an accident. It wasn't a one-off. And funny enough, my ex-husband always said to me, Nina, I knew when you were going to open that store that it was going to be successful. And that was really the reason why we separated. And the demise of our relationship was that he was from Argentina. He wanted to live back in Argentina. He didn't want the success story in Los Angeles because then would mean that we would be stuck in Los Angeles, especially with a retail brick and mortar. So he said to me years later, he said, I knew that day that you decided that you were going to open that store, that it was going to be a success. And that's when I knew that our marriage was unfortunately not going to work out. People who knew me could see what was to come. I was probably more hesitant in believing in myself, but I persevered. I didn't really give myself an option to fail. And I didn't even have an option to fail because shortly after that, I was alone and divorced and a single mother. So those were the two big trauma points in my life, $4 lunch and being a single mother with very little to show for because I had been working in consumer packaged goods in Argentina. Salaries are not that high in third world countries and you're living and you're young. And so it was important to me also to build a home. I think that was always in the back of my mind, a motivation because I knew that I wanted a home that I could design myself. I knew that it had to be just the way I wanted it. And I knew it was going to be costly. And so instead of looking for other people to do it for me, i.e. a husband or a father or a grandfather or anything like that, I said, no, I'm going to do it. Like I would walk and look at these houses and I would say, one day I'm going to have this gorgeous house that I see here in the flats of Beverly Hills. I'm going to have that and I'm going to do it for me. And I'm not going to get it from anybody else. I'm going to get it done. Partly because I grew up in such a beautiful home and my parents provided such a nice life that I felt that I needed to get it back now that I was on my own and I wanted to live that life. And it might seem shallow and maybe it was very shallow and materialistic at the time, but in retrospect, it was more of a spiritual journey for me because when I come home and I look around at the house that I literally built from the ground up in the middle of this dirt is what I had. I got a piece of dirt and I was able to build this house, which took many years and a lot of hardship. I feel fulfilled, not because of the four walls, but because I was able to create something on my own without the assistance of anyone. And that is what makes me proud. That is what my children see. And that is what fulfills me and brings me happiness that I set my mind to something and I was able to achieve it. And gratitude is a big part of it. I feel very grateful. And another reason why I think I've been lucky to be successful is that I am gracious to everybody. I try and be kind to everybody because you just don't know what people are going through, even at the supermarket or even when picking up my shoes from the repair person. Nobody is better than anybody else. And if you treat people with kindness will come to you. And that is a really important philosophy that I espouse is I try and be kind and that's a big part of my fulfillment and helping people as much as I can. Somebody asks me something, I do it. I try as hard as I can to do whatever I can, provided I have the time to do it, but I do to give back.
Really interesting. And you keep emphasizing a key word, fulfillment. And 85% of people are unhappy in what they do. They're miserable in what they do because they have a job, not a career. And a job is you live for the weekends, a job you live for the holidays, a job you tend to get manic Monday morning blues more often than not. Whereas a career is something altogether different. And a career is someone having a business or a well-paying career as a doctor or a lawyer or an engineer. And if you can do something you love, we spend so much time at work, what affects us in our professional life has a big effect on our personal life. Then you're in a good place because I often go on about, for me, the ultimate success is having a meaningful life. And that constitutes of three factors. Number one, to have a meaningful relationship. Number two, to have a meaningful career. And number three, to make a difference. And sometimes people struggle with that because they think, oh, me, make a difference. I'm not Jeff Bezos. I'm not Elon Musk. It's just me. But we all make a difference in our own way. And another important thing he said, gratitude. But I'm going to ask you, do you have delayed gratitude? And is that a secret to your success rather than instant gratification?
I have a lot of nostalgia. I think partly from being a foreigner and on this, as much as I'm an American by passport, I always wonder what life would have been like had I been able to live in Iran. I always wonder about all the children I would have had. I gave birth to one child and I have a stepson, but life did not allow me to have more children because I had to work and I knew I didn't have it to give. And I was very cognizant of that. But there's a bit of nostalgia in wondering what life would have been like living in my community with my people, probably marrying somebody of my culture and having that relationship. And I do miss that. And part of why I work so hard to get things back is that I feel that we were rejected from our home, from our country. And my grandfather was member of parliament and we had a very exciting life growing up, very extraordinary life growing up. The 6 or so years I was able to live it. My father is an architect and built some of the first high rises in Iran. And these buildings were dedicated and gifted to me, right? So it was an entirely different life than the life that we were lucky enough to live. I still, again, feel very grateful that we were able to come to America and live a very privileged life. But it would have been entirely different in that we would have been close to our cousins and our aunts and our uncles and had gatherings. I get very jealous when my friends have gatherings with their big families, especially Friday nights. There's a big Iranian, I'm Muslim, but there's a big Jewish community of Iranians here in Beverly Hills, and they all get together Friday nights for Shabbat. And I get so jealous. And I think to myself, where is that family? We've been dispersed all over the world. My grandfather had to go into hiding from the regime and lived in France and clandestine and had to escape underground and all of those things. My aunts went to San Francisco and my cousins went to DC and That's it. And I don't have a big family here in Los Angeles. In fact, I have very little family. I have my sister and my mother who doesn't even live here. She lives in San Diego. My father's here, my sister, and we're just very solo. And because of that nostalgia, this gratitude comes into play quite a bit where there's delayed. Is that what you're saying? Like a delayed gratitude where in retrospect, and a lot of it has come from growth and from life experience. I don't think I even realized how grateful I should have been in my younger years, considering all the privilege that we had and the ability to be able to go to Europe once a year and to be able to study in a private school and to be able to go to college and all of those things and business school and go to Paris. And that's a very small percentage of people on the planet get to do those things. And I don't know if I really clocked it until I got older, until I had more experience, until I really reflected more inward and understood what was important and what gave me meaning and how it was that I was going to live my life so that I could find that fulfillment. And a lot of it is based in aesthetics. And the reason it's based in aesthetics is that what I look at when I wake up, what I look at when I go to sleep, when I look at the screen behind me, everything has to have a certain visual component to it. And otherwise, I feel unsettled. And so if I'm able to do that, not only for myself, but for my clients, for my friends, for anyone, it brings me happiness and it brings me peace and harmony because everything has a place in my home and everything, there's order in everything. And so my feelings and my emotions and everything is in order. There's no chaos in me because everything is mirrored to a certain degree around me. And I don't know if that makes sense. And I don't know if that's spiritual enough because these things I know don't matter. Like I can't take any of this with me. And it doesn't matter if my bookcase is fully organized when you're about to die. But for some reason, it brings me great satisfaction and peace and enjoyment.
Yeah, beautiful. And as we come to more of the finishing straight of this podcast, I want to focus on what you're doing in terms of the amazing work you are doing with luxury interiors, and you're doing what you love now more than ever before. Talk us a bit more about that, as well as the 500,000 followers you've got on Instagram
Thank you.
and becoming somewhat of an influencer as well and conquering that.
I see so much in the future that is so exciting and so fun that I pinch myself when I wake up because I can't believe that when I make contact with a company that they respond. I still can't believe it. I still say, wow, that wasn't so hard. And I happen to now have at this level managers and agents and so forth, but I'm still a lot more successful doing things on my own. So if I need to get a brand collaboration, I've had my managers reach out. I've had my agents reach out. Haven't heard. But when I take the initiative, that's when it works. And I don't know why that is, other than the fact that only you are your best advocate and you are your best cheerleader. And so with that said, what the future holds is, look, the world is now my oyster in this particular sector of design. I am very lucky. I get to cherry pick my clients. I have wonderful clients who understand the process, who are happy to pay their bills on time. So I don't have to worry about all of that, the worry for a lot of designers that luckily I get to pick and choose the right personalities and the right people. I have partnerships that are coming up with some of the best brands in the world, Brete being one of them, Jen Air, Margiela, Deep Tea, anything and everything that I want, I am able to get. And so I feel very lucky. And in a way, I just almost can't believe it. And growing up, I always said, I can't wait till I'm there. Where am I? A lot of what happens in terms of people and my friends in depression and so forth is that they work their whole lives. They wait their whole lives to, what am I going to be when I grow up? Who am I and what will I be? And everybody's waiting for that moment of, there isn't a moment, actually. The irony is that there isn't a moment. So when people are in their 40s, they find out that this is it. You're not going to have a big career change. You're not going to marry somebody else. You're not going to have more children. You're basically, that's it. That's your life in a nutshell. And so a lot of people go downhill because they realize that they've waited their whole lives to get to this moment, and this moment is not exciting. And in my case, I worked my whole life to get to this moment. And I asked my husband the other day, I said, do you think I'm there? Am I there? He goes, you are in it. This is your moment and you're inside that moment. This is the time that you have been waiting for your whole life. And it's true. It's true that this is my happiest I've ever been. I don't care what people think about me anymore. I used to care a lot, probably because one would be insecure or young or didn't like being in social media is very difficult because you get criticized quite a bit. But I don't care. I couldn't care less because the proof is in the pudding. And all those who were probably laughing at me in my late 40s, starting this new career, and what is she doing? And I could hear it. I could hear it. Now they are believers and followers and really want to know how I did it. And that part is it's very cathartic and it's interesting. But that is really the takeaway that I wish I had known earlier, is that it's a journey. There's no moment. Everybody waits for this particular moment that you get to and you say, oh, but there is no moment. It's the journey, and it's getting there and understanding when you're in it and saying, this is good. This is enough. This is fantastic. And feeling satiated, because most people have this thirst for more. That's just natural human emotion. It's just the way it is. You think, oh, if I get the condo, that's going to be enough. That's all I need. And then you're in the condo and you're like, God, I wish I had a house. That's all I ever want is the house. And you're in the house. You're like, if I only had an extra bedroom or an extra closet. And it just goes on and on. And it's true. We're all guilty of it, but humans naturally want more. And it's hard to say, listen, I have enough. And I told myself I would be happiest when, and I told this to myself when I was 40, when I was able to pay for my children's education at a great university, happiest when I had a home that I love, which I do. And if I'm able to take one European vacation a year, I'm going to be happy. Like, that is my threshold. And I take inventory and I say to myself, if ever I feel like something's not enough, I say to myself, do you have a beautiful home? Yes. Were you able to pay for your children's education, graduate and postgraduate if need be? Yes. Are you able to go to Europe once a year? Yes, I'm done. And it just brings you back to reality, right? There's no need for more. What more could I need or want? I have anything and everything that I want at my disposal in terms of the things that matter to me, in terms of being able to, obviously, the health of my children, that's without question, and the health of my family. But when it came to material things, you have to draw the line somewhere and say, where is my happiness level? Because otherwise you're always looking for more. It's never going to be enough. There's always going to be a bigger house. There's always going to be something more interesting, something better, something fancier, something that's always going to exist. So I repeat to myself, I've got my house, my kids' college, obviously the basic necessities are being met. I don't have to be on a $4 a day food budget. I can actually eat whatever I want. Of course, I can't eat much now as one gets older. So that's the irony. I probably am on a $4 a day budget with what I can eat. And then you just take inventory. And when you take inventory and you're grateful for that inventory, and you have the worst case scenario in your head. I have a worst case scenario always, because then life isn't scary. We talked about that earlier. My worst case scenario is this. Okay. Everything falls apart, Nina, tomorrow, and you're no longer an influencer, an interior designer. Nobody cares about you. They're not going to look at you. You're dead to them. What's my worst case scenario? That would be worst case scenario. So no income, right? I sell my house. I have enough money saved. I can go buy a house in Arizona for, I don't know, $200,000, which would be fairly nice in Arizona. And I have enough money to live for the rest of my life. A very simple life. And that is my worst case scenario, that I get to retire and live in a very nice place without ever having to worry about money. That's not bad.
Yeah, it's absolutely fascinating the way you put everything together.
I have nothing to lose. And therefore,
Yeah.
that's why I push myself. I'm like, I have nothing to lose. I don't care if nobody hires me anymore, even though, it doesn't matter. None of it matters because I've got my worst case scenario planned out. And luckily my worst case scenario is pretty good. because I prepared myself all these years, and having this worst case scenario be something that's very livable and perfectly fine.
Yeah, because
Or when the stock market crashes worse than 1929, all of these fears that are generated in people that disable them. If you have a way out, if you have the last resort plan in place, it doesn't matter. In fact, I relish when the stock market crashes. Why? Because I get a discount on stocks.
I love your mindset, and 80% of life is mindset. And the problem is with most people in life, they're playing with the handbrake on than the handbrake off. And that massively affects performance and how you are. And that point you mentioned about enough, it is so true. And I recall a story that I was once told of someone who went to this incredible party, and the person was like a billionaire, and they were saying, "Oh my God, that painting is worth more than you'd ever earn in 10 lifetimes. And look what he's got here and there." And the person turned around and said, "I've got something he hasn't got." And the person said, "Well, what's that?" Enough.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. I couldn't have said it better myself.
And it's true. Did you find that social media, you took to it instantly? Because you built such a huge following. Your YouTube channel's great. You've got what, over 500,000 on Instagram?
Instagram, yes, 500 and some thousand.
We're not counting here, folks.
TikTok, over 300,000, which is so fun. I only started that a few months ago, really pumping that up.
You know why that is?
Why?
Because the secret to your source is that you're hugely charismatic.
Really?
You've got a lot of charisma. Yeah, you're switched on, but you've just got bags of charisma.
Thanks.
And I think what people want is connection, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with that. They can be really brilliant and they can talk so eloquently. I asked the question once, what makes a great communicator? Someone who just speaks well, or someone who is a great emotional communicator? He's great with emotions, can communicate emotions. And communicating emotions, I would say, is more important. It's one of the reasons why Biden beat Trump, because although he's not articulate and he bumbles his way through everything, he can communicate emotions well.
Yes.
And that's one of the reasons. Yeah. Last bit of this podcast, and I found it really fascinating. What does success look like for you, and where can people reach out to have their houses done over with your stylish interiors, etc.?
Well, thank you for the plug. Success looks like what it is today. Like I said, I'm there and I'm fulfilled and I'm happy. And if life were to end tomorrow, I would be okay with it, because I know that my children have been educated. So they're going to be able to be free, and they're set. And that's part of a woman's journey, is what the second their children are there, you can relax a bit. I feel that I'm there. And in terms of reaching me, Nina Takesh, I'm everywhere. I try and be everywhere, ninatakesh.com. I also do these great Zoom consultations, which I really enjoy, because they can be 15 minutes, 30 minutes, 2 hours, however long people need. And I give people advice, and I give advice about how to move furniture around, or a lot of times they'll have a list of questions for me and I'll answer them. And I just get I love seeing how people live. Oprah always said she'd love to see how people live. And I'm like that too. It's part of being an interior designer. So when people open up their homes to me and have a big smile on their face, "Oh, I'm so happy to be here." I'm like, "Me too." Because you never know who's on the other side. I'm basically talking to the wall here. But there are people on the other side, and I love them all. And I always say that my followers are probably some of the nicest people that are out there. Like, I very rarely have haters, very rarely. Most of the people are kind and wonderful and sweet and loving. And if I could give everybody a group hug, I would. I'm here to beautify people's homes. I'm here to give them life advice. On my TikTok, I give a lot of life advice as well, just because I would have liked to listen to somebody growing up who had that sort of knowledge or experience that would have been helpful and soothing. And I hope people reach out. And I also look forward to doing lots of different collaborations. I have a collaboration with Ruggable, where I designed a line of rugs for the masses, which I really enjoyed, because it's just bringing chicness to everybody's home, and it's not cost prohibitive. And it can go in your wash. You can literally throw it in your laundry, your washing machine. And next thing you know, you've got a clean rugs, and it's cheap. So that's the good part. So you're going to see a lot of me because I plan on doing a lot more in terms of products, consumer product goods, but this time they'll be mine.
Aferin and Khayli Maloon with my little bit of Farsi. You're most welcome. This has been great. I've really enjoyed it. And this has been Successful Iranians.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Nina.